It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a nigga on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
What do you think was killing U.S. troops?
Nadelson gave them $500 million in 2020.
Okay,
That's why.
Gotcha. It wasn't because there were attacks all over Iraq on U.S. troops that was done by the IRGC, that was ran by Iran's IRGC.
Why were we in Iraq?
It doesn't matter why we're in Iraq. I'm telling you.
Guys. This is what we got to do. Let this Nick get off his things. If you want, Nick, I can give you a piece of paper and whatever. You can write down his questions. That way you can address each one.
Yeah,
so Destiny, ask what you were saying, get into your stuff, and then Nick will respond.
Sure. Okay. So to be fair, okay, I do not know every single point of trivia that Anansi memorized about Israel. I don't have all the information. I will look it up when I can, and I read what I can, and I learn what I can, but I don't know every talking point. But I would like to say at the beginning, it kind of seemed like we're relying on the idea that Israel has no military installations for the United States in Israel. That seemed to be the point we're relying on. Well, now it seems like they do. Not only they do, but it seems like it also is one that provides geostrategic interest to the United States because of our operations in the Middle East. Now that you found that out, now you're like, oh, well, why do we care about Iran? I told you why we care about Iran. We care about Iran because the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC that was ran by Soleimani, the guy that Donald Trump assassinated because they killed so many U.S. troops in Iraq, that they have an interest in killing U.S. troops across the Middle East, and they had for a long time. And then you shifted the goalpost from, so the goalpost was, are the military bases in Israel? Okay. Do they provide geostrategic interest? Okay. Well, what's even the interest? Okay. Well, why are we in Iraq? You're going to shift the goalpost over and over and over again. You can shift as much as you want, but Israel does have U.S. military installations, and we also have weapon depots there as well. And there's a reason why we have them. It's geostrategic interest. And there is a reason why they're spying on people that are killing troops in the Middle East. So if you want to keep shifting the goalposts, we can. I don't know if we're getting to the point where, like, why were Jews persecuted in Rome fucking how many thousand years ago?
Just to clarify, what he said is, what he asked was, how many bases do we have? Didn't answer. Then he said, what benefit does America get from aiding Israel? And then he said nothing. He didn't say anything about the military bases.
Sure. Well, because the answer is to give the impression that we don't get anything from them, because you did say that. He said we get no benefit from them. We just ship a bunch of money over that.
Yeah. Did you finish your point though, Destiny? I want to make sure you get everything off before I turn it to Nick.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so let me dive in here. The reason it's not shifting the goalpost, I asked you specifically, precisely, because you came on here without knowing it actually, and I want to point that out. You come on here and say, well, it's a weird, crazy conspiracy to suggest that Zionist Jews in America conspire to help Israel. That's weird and crazy. It's not tribal. It's not religious. You said the reason that it's way more boring and way more complex the Nazis would suggest it's because they actually provide a benefit. I said, really? What's the benefit? You said, oh, I don't know. So you just claimed that without knowing anything. Then you went on imright.com. Your chat helped you out and said, well, actually, they have a military installation. Here's the reason why it matters why we're in Iraq. You told me the benefit that Israel provides to America is that they help us spy on Iran. Well, it would actually matter then why it's actually a geostrategic necessity for us to spy on Iran. Iran is thousands and thousands of miles away from the United States, as is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. You said for a moment, you said, well, the IRGC operates internationally in America. And I said, really? And you said, oh, no, I mean, in the Middle East. And then you say, well, why are we in the Middle East? Well, that's not important at all. Actually, it is, because America has no business in Iraq. We had no business in Iraq in 1990. We had no business in Iraq in 2003. We had no business in Iraq in 2011. It matters. Of course it matters. And here's why. My contention, of course, is that we were led to Iraq by Jewish Zionists. Jewish Zionists' number one enemy is Syria. Therefore, their number two enemy was Saddam Hussein. And the reason why is because of their northern border. In the 1980s, Israel invaded Lebanon, and a group called Hezbollah pushed them out. The history goes way back. But basically, they are mortal enemies with the al-Assad family, with Hafez and Bashar al-Assad, and with Hezbollah, with Lebanon and Syria. It's about securing their northern border. In any case, they have said continuously over the last 40 years that their number one adversary they got to take out, the road to Damascus runs through Baghdad. They have to take out Iraq to take out Syria. So my contention is that we went to war with Iraq basically for the benefit of Syria. It follows, therefore.
Wait, can you explain that?
Let me finish. It's very quick. It's very quick. It's super quick. And then you can reply. It follows then that if we're at war in Iraq because Jews pushed us into that war to benefit Israel, it's actually not a geostrategic benefit for us to be able to surveil Iran or to kill the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, because the only reason the IRGC can kill our troops in Iraq is because we're in Iraq for Israel. So that's actually just a roundabout way of saying, well, they benefit us so that we can benefit them. They benefit us so we could kill their enemies when we're fighting their enemies in Iraq for them. It does us no good. We would have no beef with Iran besides the hostage situation from 40 years ago. But other than that, we'd have no beef with Iran, Iraq, or Syria if it wasn't for our support for Israel.
Okay.
The problem is that I want to do a back and forth where I ask him a question, but if he rambles on like 40 minutes of bullshit history every time I ask him a question, it kind of
it's a book context. So
sure.
People
so I'm
understand.
curious, like when you say that the Israel is the one that dragged us into Iraq, can you elaborate that?
I can, yeah, very clearly. In 1996, they published a memo called the Clean Break Memo. Maybe you've heard of it. It's Douglas Pearl, David Feith, David Wormser.
No matter who's in charge as president, right, in America, there is an overarching plan. And that plan has been in place for the past 30 years. And that strategy is called the Clean Break strategy.
Clean break, what does that refer to?
Clean break is we're going to make a clean break of the Middle East.
A break with the past.
We're going to break with the past. We're not going to have land for peace, which is the idea that Israel would have a Palestinian state next door. No, we're going to have greater Israel, and we're just going to bash anybody that doesn't like it.
It's like Israel's not negotiating with anybody. It's not doing no two-state, no nothing.
It has been, in my view, a complete disaster for the United States and for the Middle East. It has been Netanyahu's MO since 1996, actually, and he's been prime minister more than half the time since then. And the United States goes to war on his behalf.
These guys all went into the Bush administration and created the Office of Special Plans in the Defense Office in the Department of Defense, which concocted this excuse for war in Iraq, this fabricated evidence about WMDs, this connection with the poisoning, and so on. And what they said, exactly, the anthrax. In the Clean Break Memo in 1996, all these, by the way, these guys are all Jewish Zionists, they all said it's about securing the realm of Israel, securing the northern border. We have to take out Saddam, we have to take out Syria, we have to take out Iran.
Why didn't we go to war with Syria or Iran then?
Oh, that's a great question. They tried to get us to war in Syria, if you remember. They fomented a Syrian civil war with ISIS, which was supported by both Israel and the United States.
Hold on. That's like 15 years later.
Yeah, because that was the plan. First Iraq, then Syria, then Iran.
Wait, so did we go to the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War because of Jews, or just the second one?
Both. Okay. Absolutely.
So
we went
the gassing
both.
of the Kurds and any of that, none of that mattered?
No, that's all ridiculous.
In Kuwait, that's all bullshit.
Well, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
In 1998, all these same guys, Wolfowitz and Abrams and all of them, Cohen, they all wrote a letter to Bill Clinton in 1998 before State of the Union and said, you got to address taking out Saddam. So they were talking about taking out Saddam for like 20 years. Then 9/11 happens and they go, oh, Saddam did 9/11. Oh, Saddam has WMDs. Let's go in. Yeah, it's all excuses, Destiny.
Why didn't they just depose him after the first Gulf War then?
Are you so naive to think that like gassing the Kurds is the reason we went in? Do you really believe that?
I more so than 4 Jewish guys drafted up a plan to get us into an arbitrary war in the Middle East. So we
in other words,
Israel.
It's more about bullshit humanitarian nonsense than it is about like spies, money, warfare, and like that's really the crux of it. Is you have this naive worldview, like, well, the government said they're gassing the Kurds, yeah, just like Assad was gassing his own people, and it was fucking fake, and it was all white helmets with the UN down there,
absolutely
and it was the rebels using chemical attacks.
Yeah,
no, there isn't, and they should go and investigate that.
Absolutely no evidence.
There isn't evidence.
There's not a single international community in the fucking world that would back up the claim.
There isn't evidence.
Okay, let me ask this. Let me ask this. So are you okay? So Destiny, just so I can make sure I get your stance correct here, are you saying that we went to war with Iraq because of the gassing of the Kurds?
I think that, yeah, I think in the invasion of Kuwait, I think it was a really big deal for internationally why we felt like we had to step in and intervene
with the Kurds being killed.
Yeah, and then the chemical weapons on the Kurds.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so Saddam killing the Kurds in the northern part of Iraq is okay. What's your response to that?
We don't care about any of that. I guess.
I think that's ridiculous. I think
it's way more likely that 4 Jews somehow.
Well, let me ask this, Nick. Would you?
But not enough to depose Saddam, just enough to invade and.
Let me finish.
Let's connect. Would you say, Nick? Would you say that the gassing of the Kurds was a contributing factor, or you're saying it's not at all?
No, I don't think so at all. Here's why.
All right.
I think
so you don't think whatsoever it's not relevant whatsoever to the situation?
I think that is how they dress it up. I think that is basically United States foreign policy, is that we come up with pretexts and excuses to do what we want to do anyway. Like, for example, and I'm not trying to just zoom out here, but I am trying to give examples.
You don't think that mattered either, right?
What I'm here's the big picture, Destiny, which is, I think what you're missing.
Okay,
is that we give a lot of excuses. We said there were WMDs in Iraq. That's why we went to Iraq.
Second Gulf War.
There weren't any.
You're mixing the first and second one.
No, I'm giving additional examples.
Well, why not just focus on the first Gulf War?
And here's
instead of
because
talking
you're
around
missing.
a lot of
Here's
random
why.
shit.
Because now you're interrupting, trying to derail.
Because you like to conflate a whole bunch of shit together.
No, because I'm making a point. No, because you're very naive and you think that the news media is telling you the truth about
well, just
a very
explain
big
then.
business,
Why did we do the first Gulf War?
which is war.
Okay, let him give his examples, and then can you please address the Gulf War for him?
Absolutely.
Give your examples, because he's just giving examples of why the United States lies against certain
because he
situations.
doesn't have the answer to the first question.
No,
so he's going to obfuscate with stuff later.
He's going to answer the.
Look at this. This is crazy. Look, he's getting nervous.
I know it is.
He's getting nervous because he doesn't know anything about foreign policy, so he doesn't want to talk about it.
Because the four Jews made the plan in '96. They got us to invade Iraq like 10 years later.
Nick, so please cover your examples of how the United States does this to do things, and then please cover his first Gulf War, because that's what he's interested in.
100%.
All right.
So I'm making a bigger point about United States foreign policy, which is that we conduct regime change operations. We go to war all the time. There's always a pretext, whether it's the gassing of the Kurds or it's what happened in Kuwait. The same is true of Iraq with WMDs. The same is true of Libya. We deposed Gaddafi in Libya, they said, because, it's not like democratic enough. Does anybody really believe?
That's not even true.
Whoa. Does anybody really believe that we go to war with a NATO coalition and we deposed Gaddafi because the elections weren't free and fair? And the same thing is true of Syria. Constantly trying to create. Whoa, why are you interrupting me all the time? Is it because you're not confident in your positions? You have to derail?
Because every time you answer a question, you make up 50 bullshit questions. You bring up the deposition of Gaddafi.
Everyone is acting like. Stop.
Destiny, just let him finish his examples, and then please address the first Gulf War for him.
Yes, exactly.
You're giving your examples of America getting involved in foreign policy.
Remember, every answer relies on 30 random talking points. So
it's not random talking points. It's about because it's about your worldview. Your worldview is predicated, and I've seen your stream. I watch your stream. You always hand wave away all these Jews in the Defense Department. You hand wave away all the Jewish disproportionate stuff by saying that things are as they seem. There are people in the world, they act a certain way, but it can't be explained by a conspiracy. That's what I'm talking. That's why it matters to go through these examples, because you're going out there and saying, well, Israel benefits us because geostrategic. Well, what does that mean? Oh, I have no fucking idea. Well, we went to war in Kuwait because of the Kurds. Can you tell me why we went to war?
Hold on, Nick. Give your examples, then the first Gulf War, and then you can ask him a question after.
I already gave my examples.
Okay. Libya, what about the first Gulf War then?
Libya, Ukraine, all these different interventions. They're always a pretext.
None of these things are remotely similar to each other.
If I laugh, it looks like I'm not losing. If I laugh, it looks like I don't have a completely naive worldview.
15 random facts, and I'm going to fact check on anything what they were talking about.
Real. The Libyan invasion clearly
guys,
it's about Kurds.
Let's keep this civil. Okay, because he asked a question about the first Gulf War. Why did we go? Is that your question? Why did we go into war with the first Gulf War?
I'm just curious how Jews are concocting every single fucking thing. And then also keep in mind too,
everything.
The only evidence of any of the fact that the Jews are behind this is because some people that are Jewish are involved in writing some of the plans.
Well, explain Kanye. Explain JP Morgan and Kanye. Let's go to the good stuff.
That is always going to be.
Let's go to Kanye.
In the totality of this conversation, the strongest evidence that Nick will ever offer for his position is some of the people involved are Jewish.
Okay, so let's hit the first Gulf War, because he's asking why did we get involved in the first Gulf War?
We got involved in the first Gulf War for the same reason we got involved in the Iraq War. It's because the Jews had a problem with Saddam Hussein. The Zionists had a problem with Saddam Hussein. It's the same situation. And here's why I bring up the letter to Bill Clinton 98. It's because once again, we can take the explanation that we were given by the news media that Israel our closest ally because they help us. Went to war in Iraq because WMDs, I don't know, we were fooled. We went to war in the Gulf War because of the Kurds. What I'm trying to say is that was already the policy. They were agitating for war for a long time. The neocons were agitating for war for a long time.
Can you tell me, how did we make Saddam Hussein invade Kuwait and then use gas weapons against the Kurdish people?
We didn't make them do that. That's the pretext.
How
That's
are we
the
agitating
excuse.
for it?
That's the excuse.
Yeah, can you tell me how we were agitating for it?
No. I'm not saying they agitated for that.
Okay.
What
are we agitating for?
I'm sorry, what are you saying?
I'm trying to figure out how the Jews made us go. I'm trying to figure out how did the Jews make Saddam Hussein.
You're trying to figure it out.
I am. I'm asking you.
Desperately trying to figure it out.
How did the Jews make Saddam Hussein invade Kuwait and use chemical
following,
weapons?
Though. I'm not
that's what I'm asking you. Tell me simply. Without talking about Benghazi, without talking about China, without talking about Ukraine,
without talking about other examples of American foreign policy to establish a concrete worldview.
And dialogue trees.
And it's always derailing. It's always derailing and sophistry from you because you have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Ask your question, and then he'll answer it.
How did the Jews make us invade in the first Gulf War?
But see, that's a totally incorrect. It's so funny.
You're so
it's
triggered.
So funny.
I see the trigger in you.
I'm not triggered, but that's just what you do. When you lose a debate,
very funny to me.
When you lose a debate,
this is like
you
your
do this.
specialty area of interest. I don't know fucking half the shit you're talking about, and you don't have an answer for me.
It's just like the
because
weasel
you
words
rely
at
on
the
somebody
beginning.
having no understanding of any history you're talking about, and you're going to say random fucking shit to win the argument.
It's so weird. It's so crazy.
Okay. The question is, how did say it one more time? What was it?
He brings up like 5 different conflicts.
Destiny, please ask the question.
It's a false premise. Here was the question is. He said,
so that we don't derail,
he
guys.
said, how did the Jews make Saddam Hussein do these things?
Yes,
I never said the Jews made Saddam Hussein do those things. Were you listening?
Oh, so Saddam Hussein chose to invade Kuwait and gas the Kurdish people.
I don't know that he gassed the Kurdish people, by the way. I don't know
we
if
just
I believe
don't think
that
that
6 million?
Let's say they did, though. As I said before, that's the pretext, Destiny. Countries do bad things all the time.
Were there other countries that were using chemical weapons on their own citizens in the Middle East that we had no interest in? Wasn't that one of the reasons why we went after Gaddafi, was claims of torturing people, locking them up in prisons?
No, we said.
Why is it that we went to invade? Why is it that we went to invade? Why is it that we went to, when we went to depose Gaddafi? Why is it that even China abstained from voting against U.S. involvement in that? Because they knew that Gaddafi was a fucked up person, and they knew that that country was being ran in fucked up ways.
China's not ran by fucked up people, and there's no other fucked up.
I'm just saying, China had the ability to enter, and everybody say, "Don't do it." There's a reason why they abstained.
Let me ask you this. So we went into Libya, we went into Iraq because it's fucked up guys doing fucked up stuff.
Are there any, from the first Gulf War.
Are there any leaders? Are there any leaders doing fucked up stuff in Africa and Latin America?
I think that generally the United States.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yeah, they're probably. Yeah, of course.
Okay, so why? So where are the ground wars in Africa and Latin America?
No geostrategic interest, and I don't know if there are. I don't know if there are democracies there. I don't know if there are democracies that we feel like are worth supporting.
What was the geostrategic interest in toppling Saddam Hussein in 2003?
That entire area, because of its location near Russia, I believe, is of interest to the United States.
Because of it, so we invaded Iraq because of its location near Russia.
I didn't say we invaded Iraq.
See, this is why.
I'm not going to. You want me to answer the question?
This is why he
doesn't want me to answer. Let him answer, Nick, please.
Okay, now there's no interruptions.
Okay, let him answer.
Let's hear about Russia.
The reason why we invaded.
Sonic the Hedgehog. Let's
the reason why we invaded Iraq,
and then you can answer.
The reason why we invaded Iraq is because Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait with shitty pretext and used chemical warfare against the people of Kurdistan, the Kurds living in the north of Iraq. The reason why we have an interest in Iraq is because of the location on the globe. So if you want to tell me why we're interested in Iraq, I can tell you that. If you want to tell me why we invaded, I can tell you that. Those are the two separate answers to that. Where were the Jews involved?
Well, wait.
Now
so
let him respond.
I want to follow on this a little bit. So you said, well, we invaded Iraq and Libya because even China realized that Gaddafi was a shitty guy. This is like Reddit talk. Gaddafi was a total
Where did the first Gulf War
asshole.
No, that he moved
Gaddafi was a total freaking asshole. That's why we invaded. And I said, okay,
tortured them.
Whoa, interruptions. Can we get a check on that?
Hit the Gaddafi thing, and then please answer his question about the Iraq.
So I said, well, what about all the shitty people in Africa? What about all the shitty people in Latin America, terrorist groups? And he said, well, so really, it's not about their shitty people. It's because they're shitty people, and it was geostrategically important. I said, what's a geostrategic benefit? It's near Russia. Really? So let me get this straight. If we invaded Iraq and the geostrategic benefit is that it was near Russia, which look at a fucking map, why wouldn't we just go into Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia? Why wouldn't we go into Ukraine? Why wouldn't we accelerate Ukraine's membership in NATO? This is in 2003. Why would we make Ukraine a NATO member in 2003 when Putin had been in office for 3 years? Why invade Iraq if that was the geostrategic benefit?
Sure. First of all, we've already drafted nations that are literally bordering Russia into NATO. That's what we did with the Baltics, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. So we've already done that. In terms of reaching into countries that are more northern and eastern, or from Iraq, my guess is going to be because we don't have any connection or reasonable way to support those countries. We just
Wait, what does that mean? We have no reasonable way to support
the geographic locations of places like Turkey and Israel make them easier for long-distance support rather than places like Armenia, Azerbaijan.
So where's
Georgia.
Azerbaijan on a map? Do you know?
Northeast of Iraq?
It's east of Turkey.
Yes.
So it's right there. It's right there with Armenia. It's right there with Turkey. It's right there with Georgia. Georgia and Turkey are allies. Why wouldn't we just go for Azerbaijan?
Georgia already had Russian troops in the country.
And we couldn't have gone in there and repelled that in 2008?
Russian troops on the Russian border? No, I don't think we would do that.
That's what we're doing right now, dipshit. That's what we're doing right now. And it's 20 years later.
I'm sorry.
Russia's got an arms buildup.
The United States does not have military troops in Ukraine.
Yes, they do. Wow.
No, they don't.
So naive.
No, they don't.
Yes, we do.
Then why isn't Russia screaming it from the rooftops? If we had
they are.
Notice how we pivoted away from the first Gulf War.
That is incredible. Amazing naivete on display right here.
Okay, we can because we're I see what's going on here. Basically, we're answering one question by bringing up examples, and those examples basically create a whole other conversation. So
well, no, they shouldn't, but it's because he can't answer that.
Well,
the point is to bring up, if I can bring up 10
keep
different
looking at your
conflicts
chat.
and say the Jews,
Keep looking at your
if
chat.
I can bring up 10 different things and I say the Jews, and then I push on any one of those, and it's like,
to be fair,
yeah,
hold on. To be fair, both of you guys have done it. So, did you get to answer the first call for thing?
He doesn't have an answer.
We already went over.
He has no answer. We didn't go over.
No,
it.
we did. I said it was pretextual.
Right,
That's the answer.
Every war is pretextual.
Oh, finally, an admission. I agree.
You're right. There's a reason for every war. They're not random.
Thank you
the
very
pretext
much.
was them invading Kuwait and using chemical warfare against the Kurdish people.
False pretext.
Oh, so that didn't happen. They didn't invade Kuwait. They didn't gas the Kurds.
All right. I promise I'm not going to be as long-winded as I was on the last video. I just have a couple quick points that I want to address. First, obviously, this is the second part. They're talking about why we were in Iraq. Why we were in Iraq. Destiny believes that we were in Iraq because of the gassing of the Kurds. And it just seems like when I hear Destiny speak that he's either conveniently choosing to be naive or just being completely disingenuous. Just being totally honest. He says things like 4 Jewish guys drafted up a plan. That's what Nick thinks, referring to this clean break memo. And it's like, are you delusional? Like, what do you think that how politics typically works? That's like Donald Trump doing something and us saying, well, just one guy did that. Well, he's doing it because he has leverage, influence, and power behind him. So when your Destiny is just saying these 4 Jewish guys drafted up a plan, referring to the clean break memo, and we're going to talk about, I'm going to go into detail with the clean break memo in a second. But when you're directed to do this by Netanyahu and you have the influence within the American government, why do you not think that that can happen? Why are you so naive to think that, oh, well, we just care about humanity so much that we cared about him gassing the Kurds, allegedly, right? Because Nick said he's not even sure if that happened. I'm not sure. I'd have to do a little bit more research on it. And that's the whole point of all this. How many times have we been misled to go into the war? This pretext, right? Where we're told one thing to where the American citizens now, because we feel like, oh, this is the righteous thing to do. We're just doing this to benefit humanity. Look at these evil people, these inhumane people. We're seeing it happen right now. They're justifying destroying and committing a genocide on Palestine, and they're trying to get us to buy into it because, oh, these people aren't humans. You heard Bibi Netanyahu, the way he talks about Hamas. He's trying to paint a picture over the entire Palestinian people. He's trying to paint that picture over the entire Palestinian people. And okay, let's say Hamas is inhumane. Well, are we looking at Israel's actions, judging them with the same standards of what's humane and not humane? So we see this across the board, and a person like Destiny, and this is why it's so funny why people think that Nick is racist, or people always say these things based on the words he says, the rhetoric he uses, but then will allow other people to do actual racist actions, and we don't put that tag on them. And it seems like with Destiny, when he says that, he speaks about the reasons why we're going to Israel support in that region. It almost seems like a lot of people just look at that region and excuse the behavior of Israel because they're the only white group in that nation, if we're just being real. What makes Israel's actions righteous while everybody else barbaric, inhumane beings in that region? What makes Israel able to retaliate, Israel able to respond, but then when other groups respond, we act as if it just happened out of nowhere? When Israel responds, it's, they were responding to a terrorist action. Well, like I've said before, like a lot of us acknowledge, it was a terrorist action to create Israel to a lot of these Palestinians who lost their land, who lost their homes. Just like a lot of Palestinians right now with this new Trump Gaza plan, whatever it's going to play out to be, they're going to rightfully feel like, this is a terrorist action. You just committed a genocide. You destroyed our entire country. What about that isn't terror? But what about what happened on October 7th, the worst thing that happened since the Holocaust. It depends on the lens that we're looking at, right? It depends on whatever lens we're looking at the situation from. A lot of people in Palestine feel like we've been at, speaking from their perspective, let me just change it real quick. A lot of Palestinians believe that they've been at war. Israel can't pick and choose the date that the war starts based on what happened to them, not what they done to other people. And somebody like Destiny seems to be either conveniently naive, or maybe Destiny's the real racist in this situation, because you're not looking at the entire picture, or you're just being disingenuous. All right, let me move on. Let's get into this clean break memo. All right, so I want to pull something up. Matter of fact, I'm not going to pull it up. I'm just going to read it to you all. All right, so let's get into this clean break memo. I want to read a couple things to you all. I was doing a little research in the background. So in 1996, a group of U.S. neoconservatives led by Richard Pearl wrote a policy paper for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called A Clean Break, a New Strategy for Securing the Realm. It argued Israel should abandon land for peace deals, like with Palestine, push for regime change in Iraq, and contain Syria, emphasize military strength over compromise, and build closer ties with the U.S. to reshape the Middle East in Israel's favor. All right, it says, in short, it was a blueprint for a hardline interventionist strategy in the Middle East with U.S. and Israeli interests closely aligned. What makes that U.S. interest? What makes anything that happens in the Middle East of U.S. interest? And let me maybe say this a little bit differently. What makes our involvement in supporting Israel as far as what happens in the Middle East to our best interest? And that's the question that nobody can answer. This is the roundabout thing that Nick was talking about, where it's like, what's the benefit of us having this close ally? And there's nothing wrong with having allies, but there's also nothing wrong, and we should, as Americans, question what's beneficial to us. What type of partnership is beneficial to us? We do this in relationships all the time. Well, this is no longer working for me. Maybe we should evaluate the situation, and perhaps it's time to get a divorce, or perhaps it's time to go to some type of counseling, therapy. I don't know what it is, to reevaluate this relationship or to adjust the intentions of this relationship. Because based on things like the clean break memo and based on the actions that we're seeing being played out currently, it doesn't seem like this relationship is what the American people are looking for. It may be Trump or whatever elites, it may work for them, but it doesn't seem to be benefiting us. So real quickly, these are the key bullet points from the 1996 clean break memo. End land for peace. Stop trading occupied land for peace agreements, like with the Palestinians. We already said that. Remove Saddam Hussein, call for regime change in Iraq as a way to reshape the region, contain Syria, pressure and weaken Syria, even using military force if needed, strengthen ties with Turkey and Jordan, build regional alliances to balance against Israel's adversaries, self-reliance, push Israel to rely more on military strength and less on U.S. aid or compromise. Wow. Reassert power, encourage Israel to reestablish the principle of preemption. Strike threats before they grow. All right. I read that way because y'all already know how I feel about war. I think it is the most purposeless, ungodly thing that we as humans can commit. It does absolutely nothing. If somebody can prove to me that the benefits of war outweigh the negatives, maybe I'll change my mind. But what I'm seeing with all these wars is we end up at the very same place, at the very same negotiation table as we could have been before the conflict or disagreement turned violent. So when you say reassert power, encourage Israel to reestablish the principle of preemption, strike threats before they grow. This is what Bibi Netanyahu was talking about in the recent interview with Patrick Bet-David. We strike first before we even give our enemy a chance to strike. Well, that leaves it up to your discretion to determine what's an enemy, right? And to what degree you should strike back. But what it totally disregards is the fact that when from Americans' perspective, I can understand from Bibi Netanyahu's perspective, he doesn't care about anybody in that region, obviously, besides Israel. But from Americans, if we can agree that Israel should be able to have these preemptive strikes, then what do we say about the other regions that may commit strikes against Israel? What do we say about October 7th? What do we say about all of these things that people in their mind feel that they're retaliating to Israel being created there and removing people from the land, and other things that Israel does to impact the region? Should they be allowed to have preemptive strikes? So obviously, America has this relationship with Israel that's totally different than anybody else. We went over that in the last video, but what it ends up going back to is how I finished the first video. As Americans, we should be clear on this. We should be asking questions. We should be the decision makers, not the politicians. If something doesn't make sense, we need to question it until it can be explained in a simple way that the average American can understand. And if not, I'm taking it as you're trying to play me. I'm taking it as you're trying to play me. This should not be a confusing type of situation. It's not confusing when I look on the news and I see thousands or hundreds of thousands of people dying. It wasn't confusing when we look at what happened in Iraq and 500,000 children are dying or have died, and Madeleine Albright gets on TV and says that it was justified, when the entire reason that we were supposedly going into that war was because of weapons of mass destruction that Bibi Netanyahu told us that we had to address, and then we get there and there's no weapons of mass destruction. But of course, Destiny will still sit here and act as if we should, I guess, believe what the government tells us. I think that's all y'all got from me. I'll see y'all in the next video.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a nigga on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.